Hi, this is Jennifer Grease, a listener from day one, and you're listening to Scandal Water.
Where the tea is hot and the conversation lively.
Your hosts, Candy
And Ashley.
will discuss a peculiar story somehow related to the entertainment industry. This podcast might not change the world, but it just might satisfy your thirst for an intriguing tale.
Oh, it's that time of day. Tune in and hear what the ladies say. It's time to bend your ear when the silver screen appears. Stories about the stage and screen and everything in between. So come on and join the fun. The curtain opens in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Ashley.
Hello, Candy.
It's a new month
Ooh.
and a new topic.
It's a big one.
It's a huge one.
Yeah.
Huge. This is the month of mayhem
Yes.
because we are diving into a really huge case that is tragic and sensational both. I mean,
I called it Shakespearean.
yes, it is that big. But you guys know that we don't deny our interest in true crime.
Sure.
And we know a lot of you do as well. And this is a story that involves some true crime, but it also, goodness, I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from this. It's just a very interesting current event, really.
Yeah.
And so, because it's so big, we're going to be doing our first ever series.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've never done this before. We've
No.
had several episodes that we knew were so big we needed to break it into 2 parts. This one,
3.
from the top, we know it's going to be a 3-parter.
Yeah. It's going to take the rest of May.
So here we go. Whew. We'll talk about our background with this in just a second. But to start the episode, I'm going to begin with a very, very shocking event that occurred towards the end of the story when a 911 call was made. We're going to play this little clip and then we'll go from there.
This 911 call gives me goosebumps.
Me too. Me too. And
It's
in
like
fact,
the call heard round the world.
yeah. And one part brings me to tears.
Yeah.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
Okay, and are the neighbors out of their home, or is anybody looking for them that you can see?
No. Our homes are far enough away. I'm not sure. How did you get out of the house?
Porch. He went out.
He says he just left through the porch at the neighbor's house. Ankles are taped up, and he won't tell us why.
Okay.
But he has duct taped around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around him. I think there's a good chance he's been...
He also said...
Oh, and he has them around his ankles. I mean, his wrists as well. Okay, this boy has been... And this kid has obviously been... I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
That is such an emotional call. You can hear the emotion in his voice. And early on, I have heard the whole call. Early on, he says he doesn't think that they need an ambulance because he didn't look closely at the child yet.
Right.
But once his wife and him start looking at the child, you're hearing him discover how badly he is in need of an ambulance.
Absolutely.
And the kindness of this couple is probably the first kindness this child had experienced in years.
Yeah,
maybe?
probably. Yeah, it absolutely tears you up.
Yeah.
I mean,
At
and-
one point she says, "Oh, you good boy," or "Oh, you sweet boy," something like that. Oh,
Well, as Ashley said, that's kind of the 911
Yeah.
call heard around the world.
Yeah.
Probably you all know exactly the story that we are talking about right now. We are going to be focused on this horrific case that involves Ruby Franke. And this, of course, was the climactic moment that turned everything on its head
Yeah.
and brought things to light.
Yep.
And we will, of course, get back to that as we go through the story. But for right now, we're actually going to go back to the beginning. But before we do, you've followed this for a while. Let's quickly share our
Sure.
interest in history with this case.
I did not know anything about the Franke family. I never watched their channel, didn't know they existed because I don't watch family vloggers. I became acquainted with the case when this happened. So this 911 call was so moving and so intriguing to me that as things started coming out on the Law and Crime YouTube channel, I started kind of just listening about this family, and I was just like obsessed with learning more about them and like how did it come to this and the psychology behind it. So I've sort of been in the background following this for about 2 years, because anytime anything new came out, I would watch it. I've seen lots of YouTube videos about it, ironically, and the Dateline, and I've read Sherry's book, and I kind of came to you and said, we need to cover this because it covers the themes of entertainment and true crime and the crossroads of both. And when you take
And
it
how
to
things can go
Yes.
horribly awry.
When you take it to the absolute extreme, just it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely horrible.
It is horrible, and I think it's what we've talked about so many times before. I think some people are like, how in the world can you be fascinated by true crime? And I think it's that thing of not being able to wrap your
Yes,
mind around
I must
something.
understand it.
Yes, it's so horrific that you can't tear yourself away from it. It's like something about you makes you want to understand how this could even happen. But this is a terrible, awful, horrible case. It is also fascinating. Yeah. You were the first person who mentioned it to me. I know Kirk and I watched the 2020 episode that came out in March of 2024. That's when I got all the information, or at
Yeah.
least all the information they presented. That's when I
At
saw
the
the
time,
big
yeah.
picture. Exactly. And since then, I've seen different things here and there just as they came across the news. But researching for this episode is when I did
Yeah.
my
Your
biggest
deep
dive.
dive.
And goodness, you all, I've really...
It's affecting.
Ooh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Since we brought that up, let me go ahead and share a little shout out to my primary sources. You had bought the book and already read it, the one
Yes.
that was written by Ruby Franke called The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom. So I read that book and brought in some information that Sherry shared because, of course, that's from
She was
the
there.
inside.
Yep.
And then 2 other of my main sources would be the Hulu 3-part docuseries called Devil in the Family, The Fall of Ruby Franke. That came out more recently,
Yes, it
just
did.
within the past month or so, I think. And then there is a People interview with Chad and Kevin Franke that was recorded just a few months ago. It's called Ruby Franke's Estranged Husband and Son Break Their Silence on Her Child Abuse Vlogging Scandal. So that
took
was
from that.
another place where I gained some information. And of course, several other sources. You can check our show notes, but lots of things trying to pull together to create this episode. And
Because some of you may not have heard of this.
right, or maybe have only heard little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Because I will say, for me personally, I put a lot of things together that I had not understood before when I only caught little isolated sound bites here and there.
Right.
Yes. This is just a candy note. One thing that I really did appreciate, I mean, it is so insightful to get to read, for example, Sherry's memoir, where she gives her perspective. But as somebody who's taught for a long time, one of the things that we always think about is thinking about your context and perspective
Yeah.
and potential bias. Because
Yeah.
I would ask my kids this, when you think about that idea of bias, what if there was somebody out there who was your enemy or somebody who didn't like you and they wrote a book about you? Do you think their perspective would be 100% accurate, or could there potentially be some bias in there because of their strong feelings?
Yep.
So I gained so much from Sherry's book, and I am not saying in any way that I don't believe her story. That's not what I mean. I'm simply saying that one of the things I loved about the docuseries was how much of it was hard evidence.
Yeah, not biased.
You saw videos.
Yeah.
So many videos.
Yeah.
And so there was no perspective around it at all. It stood on its own.
I
And
think
so-
Sherry's book is a good complement to the series because I read her book before I saw the series. So in reading her book, I was able to fill in a lot of the
Yes.
background details of things that I knew was going on that they didn't even have time to cover.
Exactly. She offered so much useful information. You're right. So much of the background, so much of the context. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of evidence that supports the feelings she talks about
Yeah.
in her book. But I loved being able to put it all together because, again, we're all human.
Yeah.
Even when you're hearing Kevin and Chad speak in their interviews, anybody who speaks in an interview, you're only able to speak from your perspective. We're human. That's what we do. So I loved being able to see documents, videos, written records of things, and make my own sense of them and what they meant or what I thought they spoke about the case.
I also appreciated, to the best of our knowledge, how honest everyone was
Yes.
in the documentary. And even in Sherry's case, they weren't, even in Sherry's book, she did say, you know, this was some good stuff. It wasn't all bad. And they talked about, here was the good stuff. Chad several times was like, she was a good mother. And I was like, Chad, buddy, you know, but that was his perspective. He thought that, where Sherry would say, no, she was, I mean, this is getting into stuff, but just like
Right,
you said, the
right.
different perspectives.
Yes, yes. Well, we took went down a little rabbit trail there, but I think it is important just to put that out there that this is what we were doing. We were pulling together all these various sources, and here's what we came up with. So one of the things that Ashley and I have talked about off mic is that we wanted to respect something that came up across several sources. Sherry, in her book, made a point of saying that she felt her siblings had been exploited enough.
Yeah.
She didn't want to tell their story for them. She didn't want to speak for them. And so as she would go through her memories and recollecting what happened, she referred to her siblings just by their place in the family, the youngest daughter or the youngest boy or something like that.
Yeah.
In the 2020 episode, they called the youngest boy R, and they called the youngest girl E. So different sources have tried to preserve their anonymity. We want to do the same. So you're not going to hear the names of any of the Franke children other than Sherry and Chad, because they are adults who have chosen to publicly speak about what happened.
You know, for the longest time, literally until I knew we were going to do this episode, I did not know the names of the two middle daughters. I looked them up just to go, I wonder what they are. And I think that's a testament to how well they have protected their
them.
identity since this broke.
Which I appreciate.
I do too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, one other thing I want to say personally, and I think I speak for you too, is when we cover these cases, these people are alive. They are here. They are still suffering. This is still something that they are dealing with, and they have not recovered or completely healed. So I think you and I want to present this information with an eye toward that they could maybe one day hear this. So if they do, I hope they understand we want to present this with compassion and love for them and the hope of their eventual and future healing.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Okay, well, since this is 3 parts, I thought let's go all the way back to the beginning.
Let's do it.
I'm going to give you some history on Ruby.
Okay.
Okay, so she was born in January of 1982, the oldest of 5 children born to Chad and Jennifer Griffiths, both of whose families, Sherry notes in her book, had been devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for generations. So they had a long history in their faith. So therefore, Ruby's upbringing did focus a lot on faith and family. As the oldest, she helped to raise her younger siblings, and she wanted to be a mother herself, not just because of her family situation, but also because that is something that's really, really valued in their faith. In fact, Sherry said, quote, "Becoming a mother in my faith is a spiritual calling of the highest order, a chance to emulate the divine and participate in the grand tapestry of creation."
Yeah.
So it's
a big deal.
Big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal. Ruby attended Utah State University, and she was an 18-year-old freshman in the fall of 2000 when she met 22-year-old Kevin Franke, a senior who was ready to graduate with a civil engineering degree. Kevin was the youngest of 7, with a gap of 12 years between him and his closest sibling, and he was a self-described nerd who was pretty easygoing and gentle and also very devout in the faith. Now, Sherry offers the opinion that her mom's primary purpose for going to college was not to get
She wanted to get that
degree.
MRS degree.
Yes, but to find a man.
Yeah.
Yes. And Kevin Franke was one of a number of boys that
She
Ruby
had a chart.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. With it, and this was like fast. I mean, she hadn't been in college that long before she had a lot of boys after her, and she's
pretty. She's really pretty
and very outgoing.
Yeah,
she was very personable, is my understanding. But she started evaluating them as a potential spouse within her first month.
I know,
this is what she did.
Yeah. So you probably start school right at the beginning of August, I would assume. She met Kevin, I don't know, sometime in August. They're like engaged in October and married by December.
It went so fast.
So fast.
Yes. But let's go back to that chart that you mentioned.
Yes.
This comes up in Sherry's book. This comes up in the documentary.
We can see it in the documentary.
Yes, he shows it. Ruby has this checklist. This was a way to screen these men to see if they were marriage material. Some of the criteria on the list included 5 inches taller than me, very handsome, car paid off, engineer.
Oh, car paid off. Whoa, girl.
Oh, there's more. Good with siblings, positive attitude, leads me into rooms, is cheerful, likes old movies, will help child with homework, prays daily, likes yard work. The one
This feels like the letter about Mary Poppins.
This is not all inclusive. There's a whole lot more.
Oh my goodness.
The one that was surrounded with stars and like outlined with this border
is crazy about me.
Yep. Absolutely. Kevin shares that he happened to catch a little glimpse of that checklist one day, which apparently was in Ruby's closet at college. He clocked, hey, I have a column. I'm one of the guys she's thinking about, makes notes about all of her criteria. And he says, kind of tongue in cheek, decided he was going to play dirty. So he started purposely setting out to meet as many of those criteria as he could. And it worked. As you said, it was exactly 2 weeks after Ruby and Kevin met that she said to him one day, so are we getting married?
2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's your first red flag, my man.
Right.
Red flag.
Well, the chart was the first red flag.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you can make a chart pros and cons. Fine. That's your own business. But 2 weeks and you're saying, let's get, no.
Yeah. Well, he replied yes.
I know.
He really was smitten with her,
He
I
was.
think, from the word go.
I don't know if you have this, but I rewatched the docu-series and made just cursory notes. I did not do any deep dives like you did, but I wrote down a quote from him where he said, getting married was the ultimate symbol that somebody else was willing to commit their eternity to me. Once I had it, I was willing to do anything to keep it.
Which is a theme that emerges throughout the course of their marriage. He was desperate to get her, and then he was desperate to keep her.
Yeah, he also said, I was very insecure with who I was. I was willing to change to become somebody that somebody else would appreciate and love. And then he talks about how fast they met. Yeah. So it's just insecurity and a fast-moving pretty girl.
Absolutely.
And it was a recipe.
Yeah. And as you said, they were married just a few months later, December of 2000, they were man and wife because they both did value a large family and being parents. It wasn't long before they had kids. Sherry was born in March of 2003 when Ruby was 21 years old. So I guess they actually waited a couple years, come to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sherry comments on the fact that Ruby was not a super comforting or connected mother to her from the beginning. From Sherry's perspective, she was always kind of cold.
I wonder if it was that whole, and this is me, I have no backup to this, but I wonder if it's like almost royalty where you want your firstborn to be a boy. And if it's not a boy and you got a girl, you know what I mean? Like, do you know, it's like that, I don't know. That's just a thought that I just had in this moment that I'm saying to you.
Just your theory?
Yeah, not even a well-developed one.
Well, the way I took it was, and again, they could both be right, who knows, but Sherry basically speculated that she thought Ruby had been raised to believe that babies needed to learn to cry. They were not there to be catered to. They didn't control everything. They needed to be shown they were not in control. It was okay to let babies cry it out. Their emotions were not going to dictate what the parents did. Yeah. But she says, kind of ironic, since Ruby cried all the time.
Yeah.
She came back to this idea several times. She said Ruby would cry when she was upset, when she was happy, when she was proud. And Ruby wanted reactions to her tears, but it seemed to be a point that was kind of bitter, I think, for Sherry, that
we weren't allowed to cry.
Right,
but
her
she
own
cried all the
emotions
time.
had no impact on her mom, yet her mom's emotions were supposed to really, really matter. Yeah. So Chad arrived in 2005. And then in 2007, the Frankies had another daughter. Again, we're not going to name them. Just a little side note is what I noticed is the kids come every 2 years.
Oh.
So it's an easy way to remember it. You've got Sherry in 2003, Chad 2005, then child.
Literally
next child.
every 2 years.
You've got a kid coming.
That's good planning, guys. Coming back to this, she should have been a boy. Because Chad's experience, even though the stuff he went through, he still, throughout the series, is like had a kind of a decent opinion of his mom. Like early on, he says she was a really good mom. I wonder if the boys' experience early on is different than the girls' experience with their mother.
It could be. It could also be that Sherry's emotions are so high that it was hard for her to remember any of the good times
Maybe.
from when she
You do
was
tend
younger.
to remember the
Yeah.
worst.
And again, as we said before, it could be both.
Yeah.
You don't know. But it was around the time that this third child had arrived that Ruby started dipping her toe into creating a social media presence when she started a mommy blog called Good Lookin' Home Cookin'. And the profile that she created to go with that said the main purpose of the blog was to journal about their family's growth and experiences. And again, as somebody who's not of that faith, it was so helpful to me to hear different insights that people would offer, especially Sherry would do this quite often, to give us some insights onto why some of these things
you
were
need
so
context.
significant. Exactly. So Sherry commented, quote, "In my church, we're encouraged to document our lives meticulously, creating a roadmap for future generations to understand their roots. And it seemed as though the internet was just an extension of that, another way to do the Lord's work."
Yeah, it's like a personal testimony. You know, you
yeah.
write your testimony, you write everything so that future generations can read it and then hopefully be converted to your faith.
Right. It was a way of outreach in some ways. Yes.
Missionaries.
Right. Ruby went on to create other blogs after that, like Full Suburban and a group blog with her mom friends called Yummy Mummies. That's kind of
That's kinda
clever
cute. That's
titles,
kinda
yeah.
cute.
Another daughter, the fourth Frankie child, was born in 2009, and then the fifth, a boy, was born in 2011, with the final child, a girl, being born in 2013.
You know, one thing that I noticed, I don't know if there'll be a time to say this, I thought it was interesting that the 8 Passengers YouTube series started with the birth announcement of the youngest daughter, and it kind of ends with the, well, not the YouTube series ended, but the story, Ruby's story in the public ended with them finding that youngest daughter where they found her.
Full circle.
It was very full circle.
Very
it
full
felt
circle.
like, yeah.
Yes. Well, now that we've established all the kids are here, one of the things I wanted to point out, which we've already alluded to actually, is that it was normal in their family to experience what I'm going to call strict parenting. Ruby had very strong beliefs about how to do it right. And again, I don't think we can stress this enough. In their faith, following the tenets of her faith, Ruby truly believed in the importance of motherhood. You know, again, she had very strong beliefs about how that should look, and she also believed you should document your journey for the potential benefit of others. And so this kind of leads to this new avenue that opens up. What I noticed that I had not heard about prior to doing this research was that Ruby was not the only person in her family
Yeah.
that was involved
At
in
least 2
social
sisters,
media.
right?
Three.
3, okay.
3. So what I realized was Ruby's 3 sisters were the forerunners of this, right? In my mind, when I saw something about them having success, I thought, oh, they must have done this after her blog went
She went after
viral.
them.
Right. No, they started it first. Here's the context. This was a time period when family vlogs were really taking off in popularity. And it was, again, because of their faith, believing you should document. And here's
It
a way
seems
to
to fit
do
perfectly.
outreach. Yes, a lot of Mormon families just latched onto this. Ruby's sisters among them. They all became content creators before she did. Her sister Ellie started a channel in 2011. She saw some really exciting success when her posts about infertility, she'd been really struggling with that. That brought in a bunch of viewers, and then that brought some money. Another sister had actually already been doing it, and then the third sister started her channel in 2013. All of them are seeing some success. So here's the thing. We think it seems so foreign, you know, putting up a camera all the time, documenting everything your family does. That seems like it would just be so artificial, but it was already familiar to Ruby and her family because she's seeing it with her sisters. It's being talked about a lot, and other people in their community are probably doing it as well. Something I had not heard about before that was mentioned in the 2020 episode was in Mormon families, a lot of times you have a large number of children and a stay-at-home mom is often fairly normal. It's also a pretty nice side gig if you can do something like this and bring in some extra money to support your family.
Yeah, it's a large family.
So a lot of people were doing this. Ruby was seeing her own sisters do it, and later her parents were also on social media. So this was a very common thing, and kind of, I think, paved the way for her to get into it herself.
And also for context, we have to think back to 2011. We didn't know anything about the negative repercussions of being online. Everybody just wanted to, it was YouTube. Everybody wanted to be their own version of a movie star, and it was working. So you don't see the 10, 12 years down the road. All you see is, I'm putting videos of my family and people like it. This is great. What could go wrong?
Right.
You don't think about what could go wrong, which is so much.
Absolutely. And Kevin offered another perspective on this as well. Here's a quote from him. In our church, in our faith, we were raised to believe that the ultimate thing that you can become in this world is a parent. And Ruby's sole ambition was to be seen as the perfect mom. That's all she talked about. That's all she focused on. But she wasn't getting enough praise and attention for it. And so she decided she was going to create a YouTube channel. And when she sets her mind to something, hell and earth combined could not stop her. And she was going to make her vlog bigger and better than everybody else's.
Yeah.
His opinion is she also really wanted some attention, and she wanted everybody to be patting her on the back as you are the most
best mom.
Yes, the most amazing mother ever. Another potential factor in what she did, right? So this led to the creation of 8 Passengers.
Which is a cool name.
It is. It was January of 2015, when Ruby had not yet turned 33, that she launched her YouTube channel called 8 Passengers. And the very first video, you've already alluded to it, was the family gathered around for a cake reveal when they were going to find out what the gender was for their final baby. And then the video shifts and you see Ruby in the hospital holding that new baby while the family looks on. And then it shifts to the youngest brother holding the baby and saying, "I love you," and then skips over to that same baby as a toddler with the family dog. So it was this heartwarming, beautiful little video, and people liked it. It wasn't a huge response,
But they liked it.
But they liked it. And Ruby was a determined, smart woman who knew that one of the tricks for getting a following was to post frequently.
Yeah, consistently.
And that's
She was
exactly
consistent.
what she did.
Oh.
At first, it was a novelty. The kids admit in different interviews they thought it was a bit fun at first. They liked the attention. They liked feeling that they were part of this exciting new family project.
Yeah, Sherry talks about each kid had their own
Yes.
video, and she said, I wanted my video. I wanted people to see me.
Absolutely. And sometimes there were little incentives or rewards for doing a good job. That was, appealing. I want some ice
$10 for
cream.
everybody that gets that helps with the video.
Yes. And you've mentioned this as well. Chad commented he had fun with it in the early days. He said actually that in the beginning, Ruby didn't want it to be forced. Her goal seemed to be in the beginning, let's just show our happy, normal,
Perfect.
yes,
Emphasis
Mormon
on
family.
perfect.
Let people see, how loving this is, how wonderful this is. In about 6 months, they had reached 1,000 subscribers, which was a magic number in terms of starting to monetize. And Sherry mentions in her book what helped them gain followers was a video of the baby climbing out of her crib that had gone viral.
That seems so random.
I know, but she even said that. She was like,
Why
what?
this?
Yes, but that's all it takes,
Yeah.
right?
Just that one moment.
Yeah. Again, to offer a little context, a Washington Post article says that around this time, Kevin was an assistant engineering professor at Brigham Young University. And of course, Ruby was a stay-at-home mom. They were living a fairly modest lifestyle at this time in Springville, Utah. Chad says, we weren't poor. That was his phrase.
Yeah.
But he said, basically, it was a simple but very fun lifestyle. He had
Again, from Chad's perspective, though,
He's
but
thinking
then-
it's fun at this point. He called his mom a fun mom.
Yeah. But then you read Sherry's book, and Sherry's perspective of her childhood is not the same as
It
Chad's.
is
That's
not.
that's why I wonder, was there a difference? Because you can have, in families, you can have the black sheep, you can have the golden child. I just wonder if there was some of that stuff going on with them.
Well, don't you also read a lot about the oldest child having a lot of responsibility and
yeah.
expectations placed on them? I mean, it could also be that she was the oldest. It
just feels
knows?
like Sherry's relationship with her mom, even before YouTube and Chad's relationship with the mom,
Was
with their
different.
mom, was different.
Well, and we haven't gotten to this yet, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. Chad was a favorite.
on
Chad
the
got a
channel,
lot
yeah.
of positive attention, which means that Ruby was probably giving him a lot of praise, because if he was getting a lot of positive feedback, a lot of comments, new subscribers, then probably he was the golden child for a while, because Sherry said that. She said if she and Chad were in videos, those were the ones that were going to do the best. People really like to see the two of them. And Chad says, he was like, I'm not trying to brag, but I was a favorite.
Yeah.
Like, I was a favorite. you
Because
know?
girls my age were watching it.
Yes, they had little crushes on him,
Yes.
I'm sure. Well, Kevin, though, not so comfortable. He talks openly about this. He said in those early days, and you can see it in all of that
Yeah.
raw footage.
Yeah.
Because let me stop and say this. I don't think I made this clear enough. In the docuseries, the family had given permission for them to use so much. I think it was thousands of hours.
1,000 hours
Yeah.
of unedited footage.
That had never been posted before, never been used, but that they had recorded as they were trying to make all these vlogs. Here we are looking at all of this raw footage that never saw the light of day, and now we see it. And so it is very obvious. You can see how uncomfortable Kevin looks. You can
Yeah.
see different times
Yeah.
when she'll turn to him and be like, I thought you were going to talk. Why
Yes.
aren't you saying anything?
Yes, I want to. Can I take a second to talk
Yeah.
about that? Because when I rewatched it, I documented this in my notes. There's a section where he says she filmed everything and I was so uncomfortable with it. Wherever Ruby was, the camera was. And then they
Right.
cut to what you're talking about. They're sitting on the couch and she's talking, he's listening, and she gets mad at him because he doesn't talk and interact with her and the camera. And she smiles and says, I'm waiting to share a conversation with you. He says, sorry. And then she goes, ugh, and rolls her eyes. He immediately tries to make it up to her and she
Yep.
says, I'm cutting all of this out. Help me out here. She has a big sigh. She goes silent. She rolls her eyes, but keeps a very slight smile while he's over there floundering. And when he finally agrees and asks her to start it over because he's going to start it this time, she puts the big fake smile on and off they go. So it was this, you can just watch in real time as she's kind of manipulating him into doing what she wants by doing the silent treatment or rolling her eyes. And he's like, oh, no. Okay. And you can, I think at that little clip shows us their relationship at that point in time.
Yes. It's funny because I have notes about that as well.
Oh, good. Let me hear him.
Well, you just covered a bunch of
Oh,
it.
sorry.
But he openly says that he's a nerd. He calls himself an easygoing person. He says he had insecurities. You said it. He was very uncomfortable with that. I saw how much he wanted to please her.
Yes.
All the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
All the time. If she showed the slightest bit of frustration or annoyance, okay, let me try it. He was such a pleaser to her.
I think it just goes back to, your core, what do they call it? The core wound of childhood or whatever. He just wanted someone to approve of him and love him. And I think he found someone that he thought was so out of his league. Because again, taking her personality out of it, she is a really pretty woman. Even as I'm watching this stuff, I'm like, man, she's so pretty. He's looking at this beautiful woman who agreed to marry him, and all he has to do is this and this and this, and he can keep her. He just wants to keep her.
Yes, and I'm going to add to that. She was beautiful, but I believe if Kevin had made a chart of all the criteria he was looking for in a woman, she would have met
Most of
so many of the things he was looking for. Strong in her faith,
Yeah.
wants to have the kids, outgoing. If,
Yeah.
if he's quiet and introverted, he probably
That
loved that
extroverted,
she
yeah.
was extroverted. So she probably fulfilled so many of his dream qualities, and he just wanted to please her, keep her. This is something that he also said in the documentary and different interviews, and I think other people spoke to this as well, that in their faith, if you were a woman, you really valued being a mother. There also seemed to be this thing about wanting the man to be strong
Yeah.
and the protector
Yeah.
and somebody who just
Even-keeled, strong patriarch is what he called it.
Yes. And so I think there was keeping her, and there was also, I'm supposed to be this person. Let me prove that I am.
Which he feels like he's not.
Right.
And I think, and I did not research this, so I may be talking out of turn, but I believe when people in this faith get married, it is for eternity. Like they feel as though they are
this is a
married for eternity. So he's
life
going to
and
do,
beyond.
whatever it takes to make this work.
Yeah, absolutely. But despite being so uncomfortable with this in those early days, Kevin openly
You talking about the
admits,
paycheck?
yes, that when they received their first paycheck,
$85.
yes, he said, quote, that first paycheck flipped me 180 degrees. Suddenly he was all in.
Yep. He said, I wanted more.
In. And we're going to take a break there.
Okay.
And come back and talk about what happens next.
Hate to wait? Want part 2 and 3 now? You can have it if you're an Apple subscriber or a member of our Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. Parts 2 and 3 of the series on the Franke family are now available ad-free on those platforms. If you're not currently a member but would like to become one, simply visit www.scandalwaterpodcast.com. There's not much we love more than spilling the tea with you every Tuesday, so we've decided to occasionally take a moment to thank a few of our supporters who help make this possible.
Along with the fun, producing a weekly podcast also brings with it more time and expense than you might expect. Your financial generosity in becoming a member through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon, both of which can be found on our website or social media accounts, allows us to keep creating these episodes.
We'd like to extend our deepest gratitude to one of our current members, Jill. As a thank you, Jill and anyone else who becomes a Scandal Water supporter will receive perks like discounts on merch and access to exclusive bonus content such as our minisodes.
If you'd like to hear your name on that roster, become a member using one of the links on social media or on our website, scandalwaterpodcast.com.
Until then, we lift our cup to you, Jill.
Cheers! And we're back. So Sherry openly talks about the fact that once they became YouTube stars, it changed every aspect of their lives.
Yeah.
The kids were referred to as employees, even though they might only get $10 or some small amount.
8 Passengers LLC.
Right. But the point is, it was now viewed as a job. It was a job, and they were expected to be on at all times, and they were expected to share the most personal and intimate moments of their lives. I mean, some of it was appalling to me when I realized what they were expected to allow the camera into, right? But even beyond what happened with the kids, everything around them. Ruby repainted the house. She would stage.
Switched out the light bulbs.
Right. Stage different areas for the effect. You know, how will this look to the viewers? Just so many different ways their life was affected.
You know what she became? A movie mogul. That's what she became. She became someone who had the production set, the producer, the director, the editor. She was a one-woman movie mogul.
And this is a theme that to my mind, is huge. Control.
Yeah.
This is a woman to me who always wanted to control everything. Let's talk about that chart again.
Yeah.
And now she's in a situation where this woman who thinks motherhood is everything, didn't really probably expect to ever have a job and make money because that wasn't a goal for her, and now sees herself as a potential career businesswoman as well. Control, control, control.
And you know what? She's being validated for it because all of her methods are making them bunches of money.
Yes. In fact, that leads directly to the next part I was going to talk about. All of a sudden, they are getting endorsement deals left and right. They would have so many products coming in. I think it was Chad who said boxes would be lined up.
They didn't
down
even
the
open
hall
them.
They couldn't even get to them. And Ruby figured out how to use tax write-offs to her benefit. They were starting to bring in money hand over fist.
Did you notice how much he said they made at one point?
That's coming in a minute.
Okay.
Yes. But Sherry said that the kids started to figure out how to play the game a little bit too. She said,
Do
you remember this part?
You ask mom on camera, can I do this or this? And she doesn't want to say no because it looks bad.
Right. Or you do this great little film clip for her and you get your friends to do some little blurb or whatever you would call it in the car on the way to this amusement park, and then mom will pay for the gas or she'll pay for your way in or whatever. So all kinds of different things they figured out. And as Sherry said, the kids tried to make it work for them a little bit too. But let's talk about the abuse. All right, we've already said this. Chad, in interviews, says he remembers laughter and fun in his early years with his mom. He literally says Ruby was a great mom in those days. And again, because he was getting so much affirmation and he was so popular, he also seems to think Ruby was a pretty good mom during those early days of 8 Passengers. He doesn't really criticize her a lot until things had progressed. However, from Sherry's perspective, she says in her book, she thought Ruby was always full of rage. She used the word evil a few different times, but she says from the time she was very young, she remembers Ruby having volatile moods. Again, we've already said she herself would cry frequently, even though she had little sympathy when any of her children would cry. But Sherry straight up said there were times when Ruby might slap her if she did something that made her mom unhappy. For example, maybe her mom would say, oh, Sherry, you play the piano and I'll sing with you. And if she didn't act enthusiastic enough, she might smack her. If I recall, I think there was in one of the sources a note that it happened as early as when Sherry was 6. So from a young age.
Before filming.
Right. Yeah. And we know this from evidence. We see it ourselves in all the videotapes. Ruby was a very strict disciplinarian. You will see it. There is the video clip, very famous, where her youngest daughter has done something that she doesn't like, and she holds that baby doll up.
The little rabbit or whatever it
yes,
was. Little
thank you. It was
animal.
A bunny, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm speaking from memory. And threatens to cut its head off.
Yeah, because the little girl was cutting something in her house, and she says, if you're going to cut, I'm going to cut.
Yeah. There's another example. One time when Chad was 7, he was just playing. He comes up behind Sherry, this is in her book, snips off a piece of her hair. So Ruby takes Chad into the bathroom, shaves a strip of hair from the center of his head in a reverse mohawk, is the way Sherry described it, and that was to teach him a lesson. She was always this mother who believed in very strict punishments. In her mind, she would try to make the punishment fit the crime, or this will teach you what it is I'm trying to get you to understand. And even though their perspectives don't always seem to align, most everybody agrees it's hard evidence. Just looking at this raw footage, you can see it. It's there. You've already mentioned this. We will see those times when Ruby will be smiling and laughing and talking to the camera, and then suddenly turn her, literally snap and scream at a child who's making noise. What made it worse is, as time went on, the kids got tired of being filmed all the time.
They don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, they stopped being so compliant. Chad, in particular, started rebelling. Yeah. And then he started paying the consequences. Now, here's where, we've had all these notes about Chad thinking life was fun and everything was great.
Now it's not so fun anymore.
He does say in the documentary, quote, there were times where she blew up off camera. She would spank me, take the belt, and pull down my pants and whip me. And Sherry has said, talking about Chad's punishments, quote, I did always feel bad when he got in trouble. He would get a bloody nose, and I would bring him toilet paper. I didn't really know what to do. He got beat really bad one time, and I helped him clean blood off the walls.
I know. Where is that coming from even?
Right.
It's just like, what are you doing?
And of course, the people who are watching them
have no idea
what's happening. The adoration is pouring in. The subscribers on YouTube, that's multiplying. People absolutely loved 8 Passengers. By September of 2017, Ruby had reached the milestone of 1 million subscribers.
Which she cried.
Yes.
In the video clip,
oh, yes.
she cried.
She knew how to play to
and where she
the
talked
camera.
about, I'm just doing small things to support my family. It makes so much sense that I hit it at this moment.
Humble brag.
Oh, it was such a humble brag.
Yes.
And those tears, they were sincere.
Oh, yeah, they were. And and they would show you comments. Everybody did adore her.
That's
So
what I
many
mean.
positive comments.
That's what I want, and I hope with this first episode we can get across to the listeners who now know, who have may heard the full story, like context. You have to understand they were adored. She specifically was adored.
Yes.
She was made the mom on YouTube on Mother's Day, which Kevin was like, this is the pinnacle. This is what she
Kevin
always
calls
wanted.
her America's mother.
America's
mom.
mother.
Yeah, 100%. At the height of their popularity, they had 2.5 million followers and over 1 billion views. Yeah.
That's wild.
Crazy. And this is where I had that note you mentioned before.
About how much they were
He
making.
said their income from vlogging steadily increased along with the viewership. They went from $2,000 a month to $20,000 a month until finally at their peak around $100,000 a month. They became
That's in
millionaires.
dollars, guys.
Yeah.
That's not viewers. That's dollars.
That's money.
$100,000 per month.
They became millionaires.
And
Yes.
so Ruby's going, what I'm doing's working.
And not only that, because their faith was so important to them, they took this as a sign that they were
right.
doing good things.
Yeah.
Kevin said they felt like God was blessing them for sharing their faith with the world. Like this was an affirmation that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. But Chad said, that while many of the people who were commenting, many of the subscribers thought this is the perfect family, he said they only saw what we wanted to show them. Now, I know you probably love this too. On the docuseries, we heard from some of the neighbors.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Because here we see this persona that Ruby has created. We see how many people are following them, over 2 million people following them. But the neighbors are offering a perspective that does not line up with this.
They were not cool with her. And we called her an extrovert earlier. Maybe she wasn't, because the neighbors talk about this. She kept to herself.
Yes, 100%.
And she was very quiet. She was very all about business. And so maybe she was only extroverted on camera is what it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, one neighbor commented that she had a very negative reputation in their neighborhood. By the way, we should have said this. They have now upscaled. They are no longer in their modest home. They've moved into this community. I think it's in Springville, Utah, that is very popular with a lot of Mormon families. And this is an expensive home. This is a nice home.
She calls it their grandma home.
We're going to be here forever. Right.
Well, you're not.
Well,
maybe they will.
Oh, goodness. But this neighbor said Ruby developed a negative reputation. For one thing, she would do all this filming, walking around their neighborhood.
Yeah, showing their addresses.
Right. Their houses, probably glimpses of maybe their family, who knows, and never asked permission. They didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that while Kevin seemed friendly and would speak to them, as
she wasn't hosting parties, as that one neighbor said. She wasn't having a ladies' brunch.
Right. She wasn't friendly. She didn't interact with them. So this one neighbor commented, we just assumed her channel was more important to her than relationships.
I wrote that down too. I was like, oh, dude.
And then the wife of the third neighbor couple commented that she checked out the channel a few times, 8 passengers, and that she was appalled about the private information that was being shared about the children. And it was everything from bra shopping to references about puberty to almost, I don't know, I shouldn't use this word, but I saw one clip where one of the kids had a crush, and it's almost like they're making fun of this child.
Yes, the texting.
Yes, it felt a little humiliating. If I were that kid, I would not have wanted that to be posted for 2.5 million people to see. It just seemed like very little was off limits, was the comment that one of the neighbors made. And we know that this constant filming was starting to weigh on the kids, because this is something that Kevin spoke about. He talked about some of the things that started happening. Let me share with you a brief clip that's just a little bit over a minute long.
But we did see changes in the kids accumulating. Hey, and Chad today are being terrible.
You can use their faces as B-roll.
The whole reason we're here is because of our job. And you guys are acting like this is stupid. The kids started to complain about everything, like, I'm bored. We don't want to film. We're so tired of doing this.
There's like no beach. It just like starts water.
It really began to concern Ruby a lot. She would describe it as they were losing their light.
Do you know that this is what we do? And everyone gets $10 for a video that they help with. Do you want $10?
Our entire schedule revolved around YouTube, and I think that's where I started to have issues.
Chad's face was like, no, I don't want your $10. You see that? He's like, $10? I
Not
know we're
worth it.
making $1 million. No, Mom, $10 ain't worth it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, watching their faces. And you can hear that Kevin's scolding them too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He said, I'm 100% in this.
100% in, yeah.
At one point, and we've already passed this point in the documentary in your story, he says about Chad specifically, I was living vicariously through him. He was everything I wished I was when I was a kid, the heartthrob and the comedic relief, and that's important. And Ruby knew that, and she exploited it. And the reporter says,
Yes.
did you exploit it too? And he says, absolutely, I did. And then later on, he says, all of that money, all of that payment came for one reason and one reason only, and that was my kids.
Yeah. Well, and that's a nice segue into this next part, because you just said Chad was the comedic relief. Chad was the heartthrob. Chad was a lot of their money. And now Chad is starting to rebel.
Right. So that means the money's going to stop.
This is a problem for Ruby. It's a problem for her in terms of the businesswoman Ruby,
Right.
who wants to be successful and make a lot of money. It is a problem for her as Ruby, the control freak, who
I think
wants
it's more
to...
that, because he says it was never about the money for her. I think for her, it was more about, well, money is,
It's
important.
a sign of success.
It's a sign of success,
Maybe
but
it
I think
wasn't the
influence.
money itself, but yes.
Control
yes.
and influence. And she's losing it.
And looking like the perfect
Yup,
mother.
that.
Yes. So again, Chad's around 14 at this time, and he admits, he talks in interviews about the fact that he started acting out because he hated being controlled. He hated being constantly told what to do, being on camera, and he says that he started acting out in big ways. He would act out in their private lives, like he would purposely mess up lines or refuse to do what Ruby was telling him to do.
But you know what you just said? He would mess up lines.
I know.
It's not lines.
I know, but it was
I know,
because
I know.
everything was scripted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much for the normal family. Like, let's
Right.
just make it real.
Right.
There was an example that Sherry gave. She talked about when they went to Universal Studios for a family vacation, but it was actually because
work trip.
they had this deal with this brand that they were promoting. So they really specifically needed to get video content for this brand collaboration. And Chad was purposely messing up so much that finally his parents were furious. They sent him back to the hotel to wait until they finished at the park. And instead of staying in the hotel,
He snuck out.
this kid, he is like this young teenager. He found his way to the park, talked his way in, and he spent the day by himself. So that
Probably
when
had a
his-
wonderful time,
Yes,
too.
and it was such an in your face to his parents. But they returned to the hotel room and their kid is not there.
Man.
Oh, and at this point, Chad and Sherry are going to the same school, and both of them talk about the fact that he's rebelling at school too. He says, I wasn't really doing anything that bad that he says, basically, I just stopped listening to adults in general, like his parents and teachers.
Any authority.
Right, exactly. He was just done with it. Sherry talks about the fact that she calls them bonehead moves, that he starts making these bonehead moves because they are in a very structured school. This is a place where you can't do stupid things. And she says that's what Chad decides to start doing. For example, one day his friend is across the room. He picks up a piece of candy and decides he's going to chuck it across the room at his friend, misses and hits the teacher.
Oh, dude.
That's not a
Yeah.
good thing.
That is a bonehead
Yeah.
move.
So in this school, a certain number of behavioral incidents means suspension. And then if you go beyond that, you are expelled. And guess what?
He was expelled.
That is what happened. I was appalled to see that Ruby shares this. There was a video clip where she's sitting there talking about her child being... I mean, apparently, we know that she wouldn't show everything, but apparently if she thought it would make good video content... Right. There would be times...
I feel like nothing's off limits with the kids as far as if they're
Right.
misbehaving, but her misbehaving, oh, that's totally off limits. You're going to see me being perfect, and look how I have to handle these wild children now.
Yes, it's always, yes. How can I show this in a light that's going to make me look like such a wonderful mother and also get views? Yeah. Well, Ruby and Kevin decided Chad might need therapy. Ruby asked her close
But
friend.
not for the reason you all think.
Well, yeah. So Ruby asked her close friend Paige.
Can you imagine? I made a note about this. Can you imagine how Paige feels knowing she is the one that
I think
introduced
you can
them?
see it. Like
Oh,
you
I
can see
know.
it in her demeanor, in what she says.
But I was thinking from my perspective,
You
how
would
would
feel
I
so
feel? Oh, yeah.
horrible.
I would feel horrible. And
Which
I know
is
she
why
does
I
too.
think that she was speaking on camera. That's just my interpretation, but I think she wanted people
to take that accountability and say,
accountability, but also like, how can we let other people learn from this? But Paige recommended a woman she thought would be a perfect fit, Jody Hildebrandt. Paige explained that Jody was a licensed mental health counselor who also did life coaching. She had this class called Connections that Paige herself was involved with. As a matter of fact, through my sources, it looks as though Paige was one of the coaches that worked under her, at least for a time. Paige explained that this Jody woman was very influential in the community. A lot of Mormon families, a lot of Mormon couples were going to her, and that Jody was so knowledgeable, and she had this background with this prestigious drug rehab facility. Oh, she had helped so many people who had problems and addictions. Paige used the word guru talking about her.
that's what I also want people to understand who, again, know the end of the story is in context, in the time, they refer to her later as almost like a god. She was so revered.
100%.
They look to her as their savior.
Later on, they literally will talk about thinking she was chosen by God and she was kind of a deity herself.
Yep.
But Paige is not the only one. There were so many people who thought this, including this one fella who spoke on the docuseries named Brannon Patrick. He was a licensed therapist who actually got to shadow Jodi, work with her for a time until he started to see some things that became very concerning to him. And just to give you his perspective very briefly, let me share just one short clip.
He can speak with authority really well. When they're looking for guidance and they're looking for help, and she's coming across as, I know how to do this, and I will tell you directly what you need to do, people respond to that. Hallelujah, somebody who's gonna call me on my stuff and help me move toward what I actually desire in my life.
So I wanted you to hear that.
That's context.
That is context, because we're stopping here for part 1.
Okay.
And when we come back in part 2, we are going to talk about what happened when the
she entered their
Frankes
life.
brought this woman into their lives to supposedly, hopefully, help their child. Yeah. Before we armchair, though, I would like to end each of these 3 parts with this information. It's the hotline that you can call if you suspect child abuse.
Okay.
And I'm just going to read it directly from their little blurb. It says, if you suspect child abuse, call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4A-CHILD or 1-800-422-4453, or go to www.childhelp.org. All calls are toll-free and confidential. The hotline is available 24/7 in more than 170 languages. And now for our armchair.
Armchair Psychologist.
Let's wrap part 1 up with a brief armchair, because this has been a rather long episode.
Yeah.
So we've spent most of our time in part 1 talking about Ruby and giving this context, this background of how the family grew and how they got into vlogging. So, and you've heard perspectives from several different people. Very briefly, what are your thoughts about Ruby?
Okay. And we're going to talk about all we know at this moment.
Right.
Correct?
But only, yes, based on just what we've talked about so far. Thank you.
I think that she's very ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's very smart. I think that she has a lot of control issues.
Yes.
And she's funneling them into her children. I, again, not a psychologist, psychiatrist, any of that. I think that she shows traits of narcissism. And I think as the children get older, they become more of their own people, which makes them harder to control, which is when I think as they get older and they start to become people with their own opinions, and she's like, wait a minute, I can't control you. So that's when we start to see some of this unraveling and unhinging happen, in my opinion.
I agree with so much of what you've just said. Ruby's need to control is at the root of so much of this. And so far in her life, from my opinion, everything seems to have fed into her need to control, and the fact that she's seen so much success from it.
Yeah.
Her husband feeds into it. The viewers are feeding into it up until they start rebelling, which is around this time right now. Her kids, because they had no other choice, you have to be compliant to your parent up to a certain point. They fed into it.
Right.
And she's like, her worldview, is that, hey, this is how it's supposed to happen. Like, my controlling things is great and it works well for everybody. Look at how I'm helping and spreading my faith, which is the second basic thing that I think is at the core of everything with her, is how she's able to also, even sometimes when it doesn't fit, I think she's able to justify some things through telling herself.
Do some mental gymnastics.
That she's doing this maybe for the benefit of her faith.
Was it in part 1 of the docuseries where they have that young man who is on there and says, because of your channel, I am now going to join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And they also show comments from other people.
Yes.
You have shown me the way to Heavenly Father. And my goodness, like we've said multiple times, everything she is doing is validating that what she's doing is right and good. And if Chad was about 14 then when he starts rebelling, that means that Sherry is 16. So they are now of the age where they're going to want to go start living their own lives. And it's her 2 oldest kids that were bringing in all the viewers, and they're wanting to go live their own lives. They're not wanting to do this. How is she going to influence? How is she going to keep this mom of the year for kids won't behave?
Right.
So we got to make these kids behave.
Right. And we'll get into this in part 2. She also believes that she's supposed to teach. And if it's in her mind that, well, hey, other people probably have teens that are rebelling feeling, I need to show them the way. I need to teach them how to handle this. That's probably this responsibility because I'm the perfect mother.
Right.
Let me
You
show
told me
them.
I was.
Right. Let me show them, what do you do when this happens? You know, that's probably in there too. Oh, goodness. Well, I would like to say that part 2.
It doesn't get better from
right,
here,
there
guys.
you go. There you go.
It doesn't get better.
Yeah.
This was if this episode makes you uncomfortable, you might ought to get off this ride now, because while I think this is a hugely important story, I think there's a lot of themes we haven't even touched on yet. The themes of exploiting your family.
Right.
We've just talked about Ruby.
Right.
What does it mean in family vlogging? What are the repercussions of that? Which maybe we'll touch on it. Maybe we won't.
we will.
We will. Okay.
Yes.
We're going to get to that, but it's not going to get any better.
Right.
So if you can't listen, we'll see you in a couple weeks. But if you can, I hope you will stick with us, because I'm so glad we're covering this. It's so timely. It's so important. It's got so many themes, and man, I just hope you'll stick with us.
Yes. Well, this is a tricky one, Ashley. Who are we going to cheers?
I think that we should cheers the couple at the very, very beginning from that 911 call that answered the door, because there's something else that is shown. He goes to a couple neighbors, a couple different houses, and they were the ones that came to the door. They were the ones that believed him, gave him food, gave him water, and called 911. Immediate compassion, gave him love and kindness, and the people like them that saw what was happening and said, we're going to help you.
Yeah. Cheers to them.
Cheers.
If you love what we do, please rate and review our show, or become a supporter through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. Whether a single gift or recurring monthly donation, your support is what allows us to keep the tea brewing.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast app or the Scandal Water Podcast YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Show notes are available at our website, scandalwaterpodcast.com, where you can also access the merch store and more.
This episode was executive produced by Candy Thomas, that's me, and Ashley Raymer Brown.
That's me.
It was researched and written by Candy Thomas and edited by Ashley Raymer Brown.
A special thank you to Josh Martin, who wrote, composed, and performed the Scandal Water theme and other music. Matt C. Adams, who created the artwork, and Joshua Reeve, who designed our website and provides ongoing technical support.
As a reminder, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. The thoughts and opinions of the host during each episode of Scandal Water are their own and do not reflect the opinions of any future guests, advertisers, or clearly professional psychologists. Thanks for listening.